Welcome back, everybody, to this episode of the Open Concept Podcast, where we are breaking down unnecessary walls and barriers that stand in the way of greatness. Our guest today, Zulfiya, great to see you again. Zulfiya, CEO of a Modley Group. Really excited to have you on today to talk about all sorts of stuff, but mostly I think we're going to get into AI and a lot of the reasons why people should be using it, and probably some areas that they shouldn't be using it. And I'm very excited to have you here today, because as we go through this journey of AI, and it's constantly getting better, and for a lot of people, very, very confusing. I'm hoping that you'll be able to answer some questions and bring some real clarity for people around AI, and probably eliminate some of the misconceptions that people have with it. Zulfiya, why don't you tell little people here a little bit about yourself and what you're all about?
Sure. Thank you so much, Brandon, for having me. My name is Zulfiya Forsyth, and I'm a CEO and founder of Motley Group. We do data analytics AI solutions for business owners and help them to buy back their time and scale their business. I started my journey into entrepreneurship a couple of years back now. It all started with my passion for automation. Actually, my background, I studied accounting in college. So I did not study computer science, or, I kind of went traditional route, finished my degree in accounting and wanted to work for big four CPA companies like Deloitte and Ernst & Young and KPMG. Passed my CPA. So it's a certified public accountant exams, and was just, my dream was that. Didn't make a cut, got really disappointed with myself. I ended up in corporate world, kind of corporate accounting, and started automating processes around me back then. And just kind of looking at, repetitive tasks that I was doing and my team was doing that time that I worked at, and just like, how can I clean up this report, or how can I put together a report, not in Excel, but kind of like back then didn't even realize I was literally mapping out, and you probably appreciate this as a builder yourself, like getting stuff from the system, and then a back end, like taking Excel and mapping stuff up where things are coming from. And then it's a data map that I was doing. I didn't realize that that was actually what it was. It was just like, oh, if everything is in the system, why do we have to do this manually every week, for example? Why can't we just build it once on a back end, and now it just spits out information with the same KPIs that we want, in the same format that we want? So I got an opportunity to move into IT department, got very lucky, and and then from then on, self-taught myself a query language, self-taught myself kind of how to debug reports, how to look at code. And back then there was no AI, Brendan. It was brutal. Like, you're just, especially someone that comes from accounting. I mean, I didn't study computer science. I had no idea what syntax means and how to look at code. There's a lot of YouTubing, a lot of Googling, and also like there were forums. So I would put up like a dummy questions in a forum, and the next morning somebody graciously will like point me in direction or help me to answer that question. And that was something that I would look forward to. Like, you're talking about like a forums chat. So literally put together a problem, dummy out the problem, like, and then just, hey, can you, like, how do I do this? Well, how would I build a solution for this? And somebody will be like, oh, this is you have to tweak your code this way. You have to, and try this concept, and just a lot of reiterations of that, lots of trial and error. And nowadays you have AI. You can literally just open your ChatGPT, or for us, for developers, you have GitHub, for example, where securely you don't have to deploy all your proprietary code, but you can ask for proof of concept pretty quickly. You don't have to memorize any of these calculations in your head anymore. Like, I took a bunch of tests in my IT world as well before starting my business. And one of the Microsoft tests is like, you literally have to like write down the calculation. Like, one of the, it's called basically it's data aggregation calculations that you have to remember. So if you take the data, like how do you calculate the averages, for example, how to calculate same metric last year, and there's literally formula you have to know. So, and then they will test you that when you go to test. So you have to understand it. You have to, remember it, memorize it. Nowadays, just ask from ChatGPT quickly, or just give it a vague, it's like, hey, how do I calculate averages here? Like, can you give me this? Boom, right there, the answer. Or if you want to like run a code and you want to ask, how do I do group by in a code? Like, just so that you have lots of data, like there's a syntax that you have to form. And instead of back in the days, again, you have to remember this. And actually, when you go to interviews, people ask you, people quiz you on a spot. Can you write statement to pull, for example, here's your database, pull the statement that will show me, write the statement, write the query language that will show me, all right, who is my most paid employee in my team in this type of department?
Yeah.
So it would be like, write a query language, for example, write a query statement for me to retrieve that as fast as possible.
Can you break that down for us? Because I don't think most people understand how complex of a situation that was.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
then follow-up question to that. If people were teaching this again, the idea of remembering code, and I understand that there's a benchmark if you're in a university class or a college class or post grad class and you're going through this, and the idea of remembering code, it shows that you've been listening, and it shows that you've been paying attention, you've been studying, you've been doing your homework. But now, is that even relevant to do that anymore, or are people still teaching that, or are people just because that's the way that we always did it, or is it more like now we really just need to be showing people how to prompt GPT because this is a tool that everybody should be using and should thoroughly understand?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can definitely break it down.
I want people to understand how technical this type of application was prior to the integration of Claude and GPT, Chat GPT, and other platforms that are out there now, because it's like a wild difference.
Yeah. So for example, let's say organization use some type of employee management database system. There's tons of them, for example, where employees clock in, clock out, where their names are, where their positions, it all gets stored. Most of the times, a lot of users use it like a front end. They're like, for example, ADP, let's just say one of those, right? ADP. People usually have front end users. They log into the system, they enter the information of the new employee, but then on the back end, it turns into massive database. And then when there's certain analytics or certain decisions that need to be made in terms of what our budget's at, what is our benefit budget, what is our wages budgets, or what is our promotional budgets, they want to see, and then what kind of positions do we have, for example. Then it becomes pretty complex task because now the bigger the organization, the more data that it's out there that you have to sift through and analyze to kind of make those decisions. So prior to AI being exposed to all of us, to common people, for example, you would really need to know, okay, well, on the back end, where's that data sitting, for example, and also query it faster because so you can get your answer as fast as possible as well. So then you would have to create, for example, select. If you do select star from employee table, that's pretty general. It's going to put, if you have large organization, you have 1,000, 1,500 employees, it's going to spit everything back at you, basically, that is in that table. But you really want, all right, who's my top employee, most paid employee in my nursing department, for example, for this quarter. And then it goes into, well, select max, and then you have to put maximum in this table, in this department, you have to put where in this department, or group by, like it, the query becomes from just select star into really kind of filtered out query. And you need to know how to write that. And then it can get a little bit more advanced where they say, well, as I mentioned, for example, tell me the top paid employee in that department in that quarter that started, for example, 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago or 4 weeks ago, and tell me and also then in what position they are in. What is the position? What is their title, for example? So you can add those intricacies, and now like basically your select statement has to be accommodating for all of that. And they will ask you those questions on an interview, on the spot. Like, okay, well, here's a task for you. Can you write select query right now, for example? But you have to remember what is the sequence order, how to write that. And there could be like, if they say, when I mentioned like in that last quarter, and then give me the department, then you have to like do kind of subquery. So you have to like find that information inside of another information. So it can get pretty, extensive here, and you have to return that answer pretty quickly. Nowadays, ask ChatGPT, hey, can you write a query for me? Like just phrase that question that I just said, and it will write you a framework of that query where you can just put in the table. So you need to know where the information sits, where it needs to go and find that information from. But it will give you a skeleton, basically a framework that you can just put information in, like put your tables that you're querying from in.
I remember my mother, she had when her and my dad had split up. I was about 15, and she was in a bit of a transition period, and for a while she took on a part-time position as just bagging groceries, right, as a cashier at a grocery store. And I remember sitting down with her and going through and helping her remember all of the codes for all the different like produce and excuse me, it was, 017746 was a head of lettuce, and 31224 was, bananas. And then it got into, all right, are these organic bananas? Are these like, and that like the immense just remembering of those tasks that was a lot for me to handle. Like I don't think that I would have done very well at that position. And what you're talking about right now is not putting stuff into ChatGPT. What you're talking about is very, very complex remembering. And like if you're a little bit off in your code, you're going to get a product or an answer that is so far off from what you're looking for, and then you're probably going back to hunt through all of that code again to see where the heck did I make my mistake.
Yes. And also when now you're asking about employee, but it's just one little part of the report that you're putting together. So then you have to merge it, like let's say then different locations. That company, that organization has multiple different facilities. So you have to kind of, you can build on, because the use cases are when on interview they ask you, they're just a little small, but real use cases is when you actually build out like a pretty sophisticated code to retrieve that information and to make it to be accurate as well on the data that constantly is changing. So every time there's a new record, right, it updates basically. So to answer your question is, what do we do right nowadays, now that AI is here? How do we still build that muscle? Because learning is a muscle. And it was a really interesting study Microsoft put out there that it said over 70% of people that are using large language models like ChatGPT, like Grok, like Claude, are showing less effort. And why is that important? Effort builds critical thinking, builds judgment. We all know AI is not perfect. I use AI all the time, although I don't code necessarily as much anymore because I have a team that does that. But there are often times I know, because I've done that work. I put that muscle in. I understand how the database works. I understand what type of certain strategies are better on querying, and like just kind of like what kind of tools to use. When I ask sometimes certain questions from ChatGPT, when I put together proposals, for example, I could see how it can just give me surface level answers. So it's very important and I catch it because I have that knowledge. But if somebody who does not have that expertise, does not have that kind of effort that they put in, it would be really easy for them to get kind of go with that answer. That sounds good, that sounds about right, and not really question it. So I think it's still really important to understand. What I would do is don't offshore tasks that you know very well. Um, I would say this way, the other way. Don't offshore tasks that you don't know very well to AI. Offshore
Right.
tasks to AI, the ones that you know. For example, writing proposals. Well, I know what's the best use case scenario, so I can tweak it quickly and I can change it, for example. But if I'm trying to learn a new skill, if I'm trying to learn a new tool, I would not even, actually, it was a really interesting study there. Even when you reading through Reddit, for example, right, to understand your potential, if you're trying to create a product out there and you're running through the Reddit comments to understand what are pain points, what your customers' feedback, sentiments are around, I would even say don't try to feed it to LLM. Try to understand it first because it's so important how to hear your customer voice so you can actually tweak your product better, so you can make your product or create your service that is more tailored to your customer. Things are like more analytical, things are more that develop your critical thinking. I would still keep it to yourself.
I think a lot of people get that wrong. What would you say that most people get wrong about AI? Is it just, the understanding of how to use it, or like I look at brainstorming sessions that you would have with a team, right? When you're looking for an answer and you're trying to build a SWOT analysis over a specific situation or whatever that may be. Right now, I mean, you can eliminate a lot of that getting together in person and those costs by simply putting the information into a GPT, and it's going to provide you pretty valuable information where all of a sudden you're like, yeah, you know what? I don't need to do any brainstorming. I've kind of got my brainstorming partner here.
Yeah.
But there still is something pretty powerful about making sure that, the team is aligned and everybody has some sort of input in what's going on. But what would you say most people get wrong when it comes to AI, and like what should they really not be using it for?
And this is like twofold because it's so complex, right? We hear all these companies, all the organizations now are investing so much in AI. Even there is now, for example, Duolingo or Spotify, their leadership is saying before we go hire new talent, before we go hire new resource, ask question: How can AI do this? How can we employ AI to do this job? So the urgency, and we see that trickling down, is just a matter of time. How a lot of that will come to to many other industries, many other businesses. So there is a definite urgency on adopting it because the speed that AI allows is just unmatchable. So what happens is if we delay the adoption of it, right, our competitors, the ones that are adopting, investing time, money into this and training their staff, are just going to convert their sales much faster. And would just the companies that are not doing that are going to be left in the dust. So then why I'm saying this, there is this urgency into, okay, how can we use AI for everything? And now there's the urgency, and now there's a question, well, what do we not use AI for example?
Right.
Because we need to try to adopt it as much as possible. But then where should I still do myself, for example? Kind of like striking that balance of productivity, but also I would say training and critical thinking. And also we as humans, we want to make sure that AI is not making us less, making us more.
So I'm going to preface this by saying I'm a big fan of AI, really encouraging our team to use it. It's incredible tools. But just to play devil's advocate for a minute, it can also it can start to pull away the value of people as well, right? It can pull away the value that somebody brings to an organization. And when some people are saying, you know what, the skills that I'm developing that I love, something that I'm really good at and passionate, and I bring a lot of humanity, humanism, a source of human to a team, that's kind of discredited based on the skill set. Now, and a lot of people are discrediting that human element for just the results and productivity that a long language model or an AI program of some sort can bring to a company. So I think that's an important thing to realize too, is the value of you as a human, if your skills are taken over, what you're doing is taken over and can be done much faster by AI. As a human, it's not invalid, but you need to learn those new skills. So what are you as a human being going to be able to do to start, really start to contribute your skill set? What else can you do? What do you need to focus on to start bringing the company that you're working for a lot of value? Otherwise, you're going to see yourself replaced by AI pretty quickly.
Unfortunately, Brandon, like that's unfortunate truth, right? I wish things were different because I'm in it every day, and I'm also trying to like every day educating myself on what's happening and what the trend is going. And the unfortunate part is just, okay, well, we use AI, it will make us more productive. So now somebody that's working, for example, 40 hours a week, right? They can do certain types of aspects of their job now in 20 hours, let's say, right? So now they still need to think, okay, one of the job security is how do I learn these AI tools to complement my job? And that would be also job security for them as well. How do I bring to my employer this value? Because that, let's face it, that's just a reality for us to say, well, um, AI is going to take my job and I'm not going to do anything about it or I feel bad about this. It's going to happen and it's happening. But now we have to constantly, as humans, we have ability to adapt and we have ability to pivot. So how can we use AI for our benefit? How can we, looking at our jobs, and most of the times I'll tell you, a lot of times what we use AI personally is things that we don't really like to do. There's so many repetitive tasks, admin tasks that don't really bring any joy to to the thing that we're doing or the project that we're doing. Like, for example, I'll tell you, project management.
Yeah.
If you ask one of the developers that I have, I don't know how it's for you, but we are kind of builders on the technical side, least favorite thing to do on earth. Like, create a ticket, making sure they didn't forget anything in that ticket based on the call with the team, for example, and then pushing that ticket through the cycles. And then also, for example, now you track and now you have to save that information somewhere consistently on a consistent basis so it doesn't just look like a mess, for example. That's another part that just nobody wants to do it. They would happy for AI to go and kind of like, oh, you forgot, like based on this conversation, for example, these are your tasks already created in Asana for you. And then here's your checklist to make sure that next time when you submit your work, like you don't forget about X, Y, and Z, for example. They're happy to do that. They're happy for AI to move. So I'm all up for, again, going back to the question, kind of keeping that concept. What do we do on a repetitive basis, at least 3 times? What is it that we know that we do very well that we also don't really like doing, like admin work? I feel like every position in an organization has a type of secretary. It doesn't matter if you're a salesperson, if you're a builder, if you're project manager, like if you're a CEO, right? That's why we have executive assistant. Everybody has some type of like a shuffling paper type of work. Nobody likes to do, and at the same time takes so much of their time because the turnaround of the project it just takes so much longer. Sometimes like, oh, I forgot about this, or we forgot, oh, this was mentioned, but it was never captured. Now let's go back to it. Let's redo our project. I mean, how many times that happens, right? So those things could be taken care of by AI.
Some industries are impacted significantly more than others. We saw, and I think when we're talking about AI early on, before we really saw how it was going to start to impact things, when we were talking about automation, we were thinking further ahead. When we were thinking automated cars, we were thinking, you know what, we're gonna see a bunch of robots out there and they're doing all these, labor tasks, and we're gonna just outsource, knocking down buildings and whatever. But the thing that you couldn't strip away from somebody was going to be the creative side, because it was that idea of, oh, there's so much soul in it. Like how can you outsource somebody to write lyrics that are going to be meaningful, that are going to, strike a chord in somebody's heart? How can you write a music or paint a beautiful picture that's going to capture what it is that you're thinking? Like that needs to be done by a human being. But it was very quickly proven that those tasks were some of the few that right away were disrupted the most. Most contractors don't want to be in front of a computer. The average construction company will go and they just want to be on the tools. They want to be outside. They want to be doing the work themselves, and so they're not really using it. They're not really giving it the respect that it needs, because maybe they're not at a point in their business where they need it yet. But I'm really trying to figure out our industry specifically and how that might get disrupted, because it will be disrupted. But it's one of those, you don't know what you don't know type things. And until something comes out, like we've seen little bits of it on in our industry, but nothing that's nothing that's impacted it in a negative way. Everything that I've seen about AI and how we use AI as a company, I feel is super, super positive because of all the things that you had talked about. It is eliminating the mundane tasks, and it's better. Like it's better at it. It's more accurate in most cases.
Yeah. And I think interesting, Brendan, a couple of things here, and earlier on, I thought when I was growing up, I was always thought, oh, like, getting white collar job is a job security, learning like computer skills, going to 4-year degree, then going to master's degree. And I live in Massachusetts, state of Massachusetts. We have the best schools here. We have MIT, and then we also have Harvard, for example. And people here, for them to have a bachelor's degree, it's equivalent to just high school diploma, for example. So people here, they go to Harvard, MITs, right, like kind of in my backyard almost, and they also like doctorate, the PhDs. And the idea was that you have a white collar job means security, go get more education and you always have a job. And nowadays things are shifting because that's where machine can replicate your work much more easily. Everything that you do on the computer, and if it has a backend access to, it can automate basically. But then everything that you do with your hands, more like I would say trade jobs, or building jobs, construction jobs, you guys out there on the field, that's really hard to augment compared to me sitting on my computer and writing code, for example. Machine can do that much more easily. And yes, you have robotics, for example. I just went to Boston Robotics Conference last week, and there were lots of talk about autonomous driving and also having robotics in manufacturing facilities to identify, for example, some type of a gas leaks, some type of a like equipment breakdown. But still, there's just a lot ways to go. And now that we have these large language models, we embody them in robotics. But it's still not as advanced, as I would say AI, that someone sits on a computer. Now it's like machine just goes in there, code goes in there, looks where you click, and then you can show the entire workflow. And now it can just follow those steps and automate it, basically, given that, again, you have a backend access. So things are shifting. And another thing is happening in your trade, right? There are a lot of people we have aging population. And because it was not so popular, a lot of people thought, oh, we'll go get a white collar job and get security. A lot of people were kind of not looking at the trade jobs, the construction jobs, and they were not really appreciating that well. Where now there's a shortage, for example, even here in Massachusetts, there's a huge shortage in trade jobs, plumbing, electricians. They make so much more money. And it's just irony of how things got flipped,
Yeah, I talk to high school students all the time, and trying to get people excited about trades. For a while there, it was very difficult to find anybody, and we saw a lot of work going on. After COVID, there's a year or two after COVID where there was, for us to find staff was near impossible. There's a lot of new companies that were starting. There was a lot of people were rethinking life and what that looked like to them. And even at this point, AI was still just kind of on the cusp. People didn't really understand what was happening with it. And it was next to impossible to find anybody. That was all anybody could talk about: labor shortage, how difficult things were finding people. And yes, there's certainly an aspect to that that's true, because just simply because of the interest. But when I'm talking to students in high schools these days, or at colleges that are they're in trade school, I see a bright future, because a lot of these kids are starting to realize that. And the idea of getting a trade, all of a sudden, I've seen this over the last very short time, but like 8 months, 12 months, over the span of the last year, there has been noticeably more interest in getting involved in construction, in trades, in electrical and plumbing and HVAC, probably for the reason that they feel that they want to be able to bring some value. But on the flip side, too, have seen a lot of AI companies start up all over the place. I mean, you scroll through, it's hard to cut through the noise about what is a good company, because you go through Instagram and you see so many new AI programs that pop up that you get this overload of information. And I don't know about you, but I have this feeling of like distrust, because there's so much coming at you that you don't know what's real anymore. You don't know what program is a really great program. You don't know what book is a really great book, because has that been written by AI? You don't know which ad has just been generated for bait. Like it's just, there's a lot of noise out there. But what would you tell somebody to, if they're getting caught up in that noise, like how do you differentiate and understand what like a really good AI program is, and somebody that's just found a way to hack AI to make a couple of bucks? Like, is there a very clear different, like how do people know where to spend their money on programs, on courses, if they wanted to go and learn AI themselves and know that they're just not going to get swindled by some young kid on the beach somewhere that's found a program or an algorithm that he wants to sell in his ebook that was completely generated by a program that somebody could go out and get for free.
Oh, that's so true, Brendan. So I use AI I use AI all the time in my business, right? But sometimes I'm just curious, as I also scroll down on the social media. And to be honest, I am putting something together. I am like learning social media as well, because that's a whole new thing. How do you package your services? How do you communicate to your future customers or prospects or people that are interested in what you are offering, for example, in a way that it's understandable to them? So sometimes when I scroll through for some ideas, I see all of those, as you said, like AI entrepreneurs, and I just ask, like, they say, oh, DM, like comment this, and I'll get you this. So I try them out, just to kind of see. And one was so good. Yesterday, I tried one. It was like, oh, like here's how you build your AI agent checklist. I got this template, and it was like really nice in terms of marketing, in terms of coloring. Okay, that was really nice, the coloring, but it was just such a general information, just like a booklet that had, I personally found no value in it. It was just like, all right, well, this is a couple of like, this is what LLM is, this is how you do this, but then there's no step by step. It's just kind of pretty vague information, what LLM is and what it can do for you, and pretty much that's it. And it's spread out on 5 pages. So
Yeah.
and there's a lot of that, like, and I can totally see. And then another thing is like wipe coding, right? So it's also another thing that's been like marketed so well, like, oh, now you don't need any type of technical knowledge. You can just go create your own app, for example, using Coursera or, or Replit, for example, or Lovable and all that. So those are really great for MVP stages, for minimal viable product stages, kind of proof of concept. But as soon as you start actually working and trying to do the working prototype, where you connect to real database to it, where you expose your financial information, this is where it gets tricky. If you don't know what you're doing, there were actually a couple of posts on X, on Twitter, where people got into the position where they spent thousands of dollars. Why? What happens with tokens, basically, a large language model, OpenAI if you use, or Claude if you use via API call, for the backend call, you have to pay for tokens every time you prompt. Tokens are really words, basically. So it will count how many words that you're using and will charge you for that. So if you're not careful and you don't understand, you can rack up charges pretty quickly. If you have a code running that you didn't, for example, optimize, or you didn't stop, now all of a sudden nobody's monitoring that code, for example. Now you have thousands of dollars that you spend money on, and you do not know even what's happening. Or, for example, if you're storing in some type of a cloud, also, if it's running extensive code that you had no idea it's doing, or you enable some type of a let's say some type of a capacity or feature in your cloud storage, on your Azure cloud storage or your Amazon cloud storage, and you didn't read the terms of conditions, now you can wake up the next morning and see $1,000 bill, for example, for running your code.
That's just
Or another thing that could happen is that wipe coding, right? They say, oh, well, like this is how you learn. Well, guess what? People put their information. It's a digital tool, and hackers are getting really good at as well. So they can hack your financial information, your name, your email, and now can send stuff to basically using your information to many other people. So there's just so many, and there are actual cases like that happened. So what I would say is always try to say, okay, what kind of problem am I trying to solve? And let's solve the problem that, again, that you know yourself. So I always try to say, like, going back again, like, I'm trying to automate my process that I know already very well. Like, I'm not reinventing a new process that I have no idea. I've never tried this before, for example. I know this process very well. I know what kind of systems do I use, what kind of steps should be used. And then let's say also make sure that I'm running this securely as well. That's another thing that we need to keep in mind. Or if we're trying to, and so let's replicate that. Let's have a real use case scenario. Let's make it small. Small, what I'm saying, all right, well, for example, every time I get a call, how do I save that call somewhere on my, even that small step? Every time I have a record a call, instead of me downloading it and manually and then saving somewhere on my, let's say within my organization, how can I automate that process? I have a call, record a call for the AI note taker. How can I push it into the, let's say my SharePoint or somewhere on a cloud so it's automatically stored with the proper name? This is a small task, but something that I have to do on a repetitive basis. So let's automate that. Let's solve that problem and let's find things. Let's go on YouTube's and let's look, for example, OpenAI Academy. It's free. NVIDIA has many free courses. Coursera has a free courses as well. And just dissect that problem into small pieces. And the way I would do this, even, I would literally draw out the workflow on a piece of paper, or even on a piece of paper, or if you use some type of digital note taker, do that and literally like dissect it. Number one step, the call from AI note taker goes into here with this type of naming convention, for example, just step by step, and then try to ask the ChatGPT, literally take that screenshot. Ask from ChatGPT, guide me through this step by step. Where should I go? Right? And then write the prompt, for example. And then you can also use Google AI Studio. And actually, here's two things. OpenAI has also developer platform. So it's not for developer platform. It's free as well. So you have to go to platform OpenAI. It has a real-time abilities there. What do I mean by real-time? It has ability for you to take a screenshot of your code and kind of guide you through. Google AI Studio has the same thing. You can share your screen and you can talk with it as well. And it can tell you, for example, oh, all right, well, I see what you're sharing with me. I see that you're trying to automate this workflow. Well, I think the first step for you is to go here and here and here. And these are the tools that you might be helpful for you to consider. And then you can try doing that. And actually, it would be like a tutor sitting with you, reading your screen, seeing what you were doing, and actually advising you on it, which is pretty incredible. So sometimes sometimes you might get stuck depending how complex things are, but it's still like you will have someone right there available for you.
So basic writing tasks is, I think, what a lot of people are using it for, but how deep can companies really go with this to really start to benefit them? What would somebody that maybe has surface level experience with ChatGPT or a similar model have? What would be a step deeper that they could go that they probably don't know is possible yet?
Yeah, and I think ChatGPT OpenAI is pretty good. And I would also say there is a Google AI Studio that you could use, and Google AI Studio has all of the other models, like a Flash model, Flash Pro model, mini model. They can toggle, and there is a cap on the tokens, meaning on how much they can prompt, but they can still utilize that. So they can, what I would say, OpenAI, Claude, Google AI Studio, Grok, have all of them. Why not? And actually, when you're trying to figure this out, some of them, like for example, ChatGPT has deep research, which is available with $20 plan, for example. That's a really powerful tool for you to help you with doing research, and then you can actually read through research, make kind of your judgments instead of you sifting through multiple websites. And really, people could just ask a question. I'm trying to improve this process. Is this feasible with VI? Can you please break it down for me? And also they can, and then there's another thing. the way they prompt is also very important. Sometimes most people just do one-shot prompting, like zero-shot prompting, where they just kind of like, give me the LinkedIn post for my business around, let's say, marketing for AI. It's just very short, and the most of the times they will get very generic responses. The best way to prompt is basically assign the role, give examples, give them what format they want to see the output on. And then also give some, as I mentioned, give some examples of how they would like to see their answer to be in, and what type of sources they would like the answer to be from, and also provide some type of a trusted source, how it came up with that answer. So that helps. So the more detailed they become with their prompt, the better output that they get. But really, they could just start with, and then they can copy paste that prompt in Claude, in Grok, and Google AI Studio, and see what kind of output they get. Compare the answers. Yeah, and that's how you can validate. For example, that's how you can get on aggregate. You can aggregate on those answers and kind of come to one that really makes sense the most.
How are you helping people navigate through all of this?
Yeah, absolutely. So when we help businesses, the way I see us is almost with filling in the gaps. That's what happens. So we're really good at understanding data. We're really good at unifying data across multiple systems that the business might use, and filling this gap of, okay, well, sometimes it happens this system doesn't talk to this system, and for me to get the answer, I have to really manipulate the data, for example. And it's very important, because if you layer over large language model that now has to make decisions based on that data they're exposed to, you really need to make sure you have a clean, reliable data. And then you also have ability to automate the process. For example, one of the things that we help our clients with is shortening the sales cycle. So a lot of times we've noticed that the businesses, and this is where AI comes in, it's how can you accelerate your growth with the same amount of headcount that you have? So how can you double or 5 times your growth with the same amount of headcount that you have? And that's because a lot of times people think, oh, I hire additional person, I need to, like, if I want to increase my volume. But if we audit these systems and figure out, okay, what is your process? What does your sales process looks like from the moment somebody calls to your office and requests some type of a quote, for example? And then what kind of steps do you take? Who are your people that have to go now, fetch that information, do some type of information, fetch it to another person, and the kind of chain, then it looks like, or sometimes we have, this takes 3 weeks instead of, instead of a week and a half, for example, because it got stuck here or information got lost here. So we try to automate that process for them. And we also determine, all right, what's the right strategy for you? Is this really artificial intelligence that you need to use here, or is it just pure automation? And
Right, because I'm thinking of the two as essentially being the same thing. Because when I'm thinking of AI, I'm thinking more, yeah, I'm thinking my head goes right to automation, but there's a very different different outcome from both of them, because AI can automate, but automating is very different than AI, and the use cases for all of that is going to be exceptionally different.
absolutely. So we, for example, we help construction companies, but we also help healthcare companies as well, healthcare clinics, for example, as well. And a lot of times they, when we talk to people now, they would say, oh, I really want AI to come in and kind of help me out here. But once you started doing the audit, you realize, well, there's no processes in place, there's no training in place, and there's no systems in place. So then it's like, all right, let's make sure that AI cannot help you here yet. And then also what you're trying to do is not artificial intelligence, it's business intelligence. And business intelligence is what I started my whole journey of automation. It's automation of reporting. Literally just, okay, well, sometimes let's say you have a clinic, you have multiple locations, and you constantly have to put information on what's your performance like. For example, how much is the revenue per nurse or per clinician in your facility? If you want to go expand, does it make sense for you to expand or not? Are you manually creating those analytics, for example? And then when you layer over AI as well, you also need analytics to see, okay, well, if you, for example, what is your ROI on your AI, for example? Is it really speeding up the process for you, or is this the, sometimes the question is also, well, how long does it take you to do this task? If you're trying to automate this task because I know it's taking you a long time, or you have staff that is inconsistent, but really it takes like 2 hours a month, and it's just kind of like, it's sometimes frustrating to keep people aligned, but it's not really worth done for automation. Like things like that, we also talk about kind of to discern, all right, how do you first, before you lay over even AI, how do you first do your data reporting well? Because you need to know your numbers before you even go and do artificial intelligence now and do all of these insights that AI could pull on. For example, if you're trying even to submit claims, make sure that your claims that you're processing are not getting denied. But first, do you have your financial in place? Do you know how much money are you making? What is your revenue per your, for example, you have revenue coming from different types of service that you provide, and where are you really losing money? Where is your claims are getting denied, for example, and how much of those claims you're getting denied? And then you can layer AI on top of it. And now, before you submit a claim, you have an AI checklist that helps you to not get that claim denied. Does that make sense?
Totally. So you would work with a company, come in, do a deep dive with them, because I know there's a lot of companies and that don't know. I've talking to my mom. I'm referencing her again here, but she owns now. She's no longer working at the grocery store. That was 20 years ago. But the she owns a women's consignment store, selling
Mm.
women's clothing and stuff. And she's like, you know what? I don't know where AI fits in. I really want to know, because I feel like I'm missing out on something, but I don't know where to look. I don't know what to do. I don't know which process would make sense. But you would work with somebody like that, be able to go in, do a bit of an audit of their company, and kind of work with them throughout the workflow,
Yeah,
understand what it is, look at some of the bottlenecks that they're having, do a
yeah.
bit of a deep dive, and determine where AI can help out and provide solutions for that.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what we do. Because again, I can see how it's so overwhelming for businesses. And then once you start talking to them, you realize, okay, this is their tech stack, technological stack that they use. These are systems that they use. And then you really ask them the questions: what is taking you the longest time? What is the most, it doesn't have to be anything big. Sometimes it's a little things that make
Yeah.
huge impact. And I'll tell you, not picking up your call costing you missed revenue. It's just such a small thing. And then there's so many applications out there that like pick up the call, for example, just a little one that I'll tell you that I see the most. Okay, so they will pick up the call, and then if the call is missed, they give the recording of the call to the owner, for example, or to their, let's say, leadership team or management team. Now the management team still have to listen to that call to figure out what happened, and then
Right.
have to either get back to that person or give some type of information, like some type of action needs to be taken. Well, imagine that person is also tied up with something else. Usually that call would be answered in the best case scenario next day, sometimes in a couple of days, for example, right? But then what if there was a sale in there that could have happened?
I had called a landscaping company because I wanted my lawn cut,
Yeah,
and it was an automated phone number that I had called, and
yeah,
they had said, hey, this is, you've reached so and so landscaping. Your call has been recorded, and somebody will get back to you right away.
yeah.
And it was sort of answered a call. I was like, oh, what's your address? What are you looking for to do this? And it was like, awesome. We've now sent the details over to somebody, and they will get back to you. That person never called me. It took like 3 days for that person to get back to me. I'm like, what is the use of doing this? Why you're much better off just picking up your cell phone and talking to me, rather than having some AI collect my information and then not get back to me. Like, there's still a very human thing. Like, people, and this was just simply a call off of Google. I wasn't tied to this company. I didn't have any
Yeah.
sort of relationship with them. So what did I do? I went down the list and I called the next number that I could find. And that person
I,
picked up. I'm like, I'm trying to get my lawn cut here. I'm not like, it's not an emotional purchase. I just want to get my lawn cut. It doesn't need to be complicated. But that company lost out on the sale because they didn't know how to handle the AI that they had introduced into their company. And that in fact lost on the sale because they weren't doing that the right way.
And that happens through all type of service you can think of. Any type of service that has some type of a automated service or some type of a, or you know, sometimes they even have person picking up the call, but they won't get back to you. They might take the information, but getting back piece just sometimes takes a long time. So that could be used for any type of a service, right? Any type of office, landscaping, construction, clinic. Let's say you call dental office, or you call any type of clinic that you're trying to make an appointment with anyone, really. And nowadays people love speed. People just want to solve this problem right now. They want to either book an appointment, get their quote, and move on with their day. They want some type of resolution at this point. So instead of that call being never answered to you, what it could be done is, all right, well, the phone call gets transcribed, for example, and the action items comes in for it. So there is a workflow that happens. Well, they gather from you information, you get some type of notification text. People prefer talking through texting rather than call so much more. And let me know if you disagree.
Half the time when I'm calling on my phone or texting, I mean, the transcription isn't super dialed yet, but I talk and text all the time, right? It transcribes. It's just much easier. There's less friction, but you always
Yes.
still do have, you always do before I send. I always have to double check to just make sure that I got it right. Otherwise, I'm going in and retexting it to, clear it up anyways. And at that point, I've just, lost that
Yeah.
time.
Yeah, but in the way where the business could use it, so they get the call, and let's say they miss the call, which is fine, sometimes happens. But now instead of getting recording of the call, and now they have to spend time listening to that call, and they figure out what action do I take. And sometimes if they tied up, that could be next day, 2 days, 3 days, and let's say they have multiple calls like that. Well, if there is a workflow that says, all right, audit the call, get the transcript, and based on the transcript, your choices are either get back to this person with some type of a, let's say, Google form that you can collect the information, tell them somebody will be back of you, and then create some trigger where I get, like, somebody in your team gets triggered. This is a sale call. Somebody's really looking for. Can you get back to them ASAP? So nobody has to listen and make a judgment, determine what happens. So you kind of, the call gets recorded, it gets qualified and then action item comes up from it. Yes, potential sales call, no referral, for example. And there is an action there too. So, and this is where the money gets lost a lot of times, because this is exactly what happens to you happens. Like, I see that all the time. And this is one thing that I help my customers across, like, many of the businesses that I see the moving needle. It's like, if you do this one thing to make sure, but then another thing is that you need to make sure, what do your process looks like? Do you have systems where that call gets captured? What happens with another person who needs to fetch it? Do you have a system around where it can actually, okay, well, if that happens, what happens next? So it doesn't get kind of lost in the air. It has to go somewhere to trigger some type of action. And basically, yeah.
You really need a system in place to make sure that you're doing some quality control checks to make sure that they are in fact working properly, because we are relying on technology that most of us know very little about. It's a service, and if that isn't working properly, I tried to book a cleaning company, right? And this is, their contact page for their website. I put all my information in, just wanted to, this is like just traditional contact page on the website. Went to them, and I'd called, didn't hear anything for a couple of days, tried calling them, and they said, you know what, we've been getting a lot of feedback that our contact page, we haven't been receiving the emails. So you're not the first person that's told us this. And that with AI, if you're putting your trust in AI, into technology that has, like, we're talking software, we're talking programs that do have glitches, you need to have a loop in place or some sort of quality control to make sure that that is working the way that it's supposed to work. Because that's kind of my fear, right? And I'm sure if
Oh,
it's my fear, it's the fear of somebody else. I'm going to put this in place. Like, we use Zapier for a few automations, and
yeah,
it works really, really well when it's working. But if something is
yes,
glitching somewhere between this automation, this automation, this automation, this automation, this automation, you
yes,
need to have a process in place to make sure
yes.
that it's not messing with, the everybody's day to day, or it like it's just not doing what it needs to do.
So Brendan, you did such a good, this is such a great point, twofold. So when we build things, and that's always like the way I think of it is a digital tool that needs oversight, that needs monitoring. It's like a mini intern, right? That's out there living in your ecosystem and making sure, but somebody, human oversight needs to still be happening. Obviously, we can set up our notifications, for example, and triggers on our end to monitor this tool. But when we work with clients, we say to them, okay, we implement the AI, but don't think that AI could just be on its own out there. Now that you bought it once, basically, it's like living and you don't need support. There is a support, there is a maintenance. So this is just one of the realities that AI is not going to come, but just kind of land on your systems magically. It needs to be basically like implemented. It needs to be put in place and making sure it's integrated as well, so it's not just kind of loose-ended. And also then we need to make sure we have a dedicated person that's overseeing that process, that something like that would not happen, for example. And another thing that I see, and then the second thing that I see, for example, there are softwares out there like Jobber, for example, or some CRMs that already provide AI assistance. But here's the thing. A lot of times that I also hear is that business owners, well, there's AI software, I'm just going to enable it, turn it on, but nobody's checking, okay, how is it integrating? How is it audit calls, right? They like, oh, well, it's cost so much to, for example, to fine tune it or really to put it in place properly and train it properly, put a proper transcript and actually give it direction. All right, when call happens, do this, 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 and then monitor. How is it answering? Do the audit logs, basically, of the handling, phone call handling before onboarding it. Before onboarding to masses. We all know AI is great, but as soon as you started onboarding, opening doors to a lot of phone calls, it might hallucinate. So you need to really kind of fine tune it's like an intern or like an employee that you onboard, and you make sure that you give them feedback, performance feedback. Before they out there and making these representations on your behalf, make sure it's vetted out, basically.
You're giving the AI feedback.
Exactly. And you fine tuning that model. But what happens when we have these big systems, they have their own out-of-box AI tools. They give you a tool that you have to fit your workflow into their tool. It's your job to integrate it properly and ethically within your organization, because at the end of the day, they give you out-of-box tool. But I also have seen cases where people just like turn it on, and then I'm like, so how's that going for you? Well, so sometimes I say, well, the customers, especially, and here's where a tricky part, with older generation that's calling you business, you want to be a little bit more cautious with younger generation. Younger generation is more susceptible. They understand phones and technology better than kind of traditional generation, right? That they want much more hand handling. They want to make sure that they want to talk to a human at the end of the day to close the sale, for example. They want as much as less. They want minimal interaction with some type of a robot. Like, let's be honest there. The way I see the AI is not to close the sale for you, it's just to fetch the call. It's like a receptionist that is always on it, that you don't miss the calls that we talk about. But also, the way I say is like, okay, well, there are softwares that provide out of box, but then have you audited those calls? How are they responding to your potential customers that are trusting their time, basically trusting in you to help them? Are you auditing those logs? If it's failed, are you trying to go and change and make those changes to that AI voice assistant? Or are you just like, oh, well, I lost the customer, so what? Like, for example, it's too costly for me to actually have somebody that will fine tune this AI voice agent to my business to make sure it's actually working properly before I roll it out to the masses, for example, and see how it goes.
I had an issue with a piece of software that I was using, and on the website it says, contact us here, chat with us, no problem.
Yeah.
But I really just wanted to talk to a person. And at some point, I was just like, I just want somebody to empathize with my situation and walk me through how to do this. I don't want them to send me a link to a pre-recorded video on how to deal with this situation that isn't representative entirely of the issue that I'm having. I need to get somebody there to have them walk me through that. And because they didn't offer that support, I eliminated that, because I was like, you know what, this program will be good for a little while, but I know that I'll get personally frustrated if I can't at some point get a hold of a person to walk me through that. For the most part, 80% of the time, 90% of the time, it's going to be fine. But for that 10% that's really crucial, that's critical, you can't really get that from a how-to video if there's something that you need to work through. And I just want to talk to somebody. And I think a lot of companies, maybe this is just my personal opinion, I'm kind of like right in the middle of not having technology, not having a lot of it, and so really learning it as it comes out. Right, I have used to have cell phones, pager that you clip on your belt. That was a cool thing. And then when you get a cell phone, you go to 7-Eleven and you buy minutes to put into your phone so that you can call your friends, but you're really diligent about those minutes
Yeah.
that you're using, because once they're gone, then you have to go back to 7-Eleven and buy another chip and put in a code and all that sort of stuff, and it was painful. So, right. But at the same time, now getting very in depth into AI, but that learning curve, like there's still a part of me that really just wants to talk to a person. And maybe the younger generation that just loves AI, they don't want to talk to people. And so we're really seeing this transition or this mindset, or better yet, it's more of an expectation, right? My expectation is that if I have an issue, I'm going to be, and I'm paying somebody money, I'm paying a company money, that I'm going to be able to talk to a person in a time of need. But maybe the expectation from a younger generation, that is just not there. It's just assumed that, hey, you're only gonna, this is the best that you can get, is just chatting with an AI, or an automated bot, or the idea of actually talking to a human being is just not something that we expect to do. Is that, like, are we in a weird transition here? Is that kind of where we're leading, or do you think that all companies should have, be backed up and still be able to reach a human being? Am I kind of crazy?
No, no, no. This is a good point. And I think the way I see AI is when people ask me, for example, business asks me, can you build me sales AI agent that just, handles the entire sales call for me and sells it because they want to automate that process, for example. And my answer is, I advise against that because human interaction, human, I, also AI cannot think fast on their feet, cannot handle the objections, cannot hear the sentiment or change of voice, for example, on the other line. So where I see the AI is good is secretary. Great. Picking up the calls, fetching it and giving it to somebody, making sure it doesn't fall through the cracks. Fantastic. Making sure that AI is like, I'm prepping the information for you as you a salesperson. Who did I solve last time in this type of a vicinity, for example, or in this type of industry? How much did we sell it for? Great. I'm going to go fetch that information for you. But get on the call with the customers, and everything that to do with money, you want human there. This is just rule of thumb. Anything that is close to money is human. That goes to writing emails to potential customers, because who really is writing your emails most of the times? Yeah, we know about the unsubscribe, fine, you move it in unsubscribe button, but most of the times it's your people that you met somewhere in the network, or someone is referring you business, or someone's reaching out asking your current clients. Those are the people that you want to serve, that asking for your valuable time. And for me, that should be human there.
Yeah, I have this understanding and this theory that people want to do business with people, right? If you're a
Yes.
business owner, people want to do business with people. The idea of brand, I think, is, and when I say brand, I mean, like, in a traditional sense, company brand sign on the side of a building. It's meaning less and less these days, because of all of the noise that we were talking about previously, and all of the distractions, and not knowing what's real, who to do business with, what companies you can trust, because we are just in this stage where we have so much information thrown at us. And every time we're scrolling on our phone in any sort of program, we have any number of ads coming up that's like, new AI, do this, that. Like, we just don't know what to trust, or we don't know who is behind it. And if people in our business, they spend a huge amount of money with us, $500,000, $1 million, $2 million, because we're building something for them that they are going to live in, or a space where they're opening up their business for the first time, they're not gonna hand over that large of an amount of money, or hand over the largest asset that they ever own without knowing who they're doing business with. And so I think that when we're talking about AI companies, when we're talking about having a human being there that's representative, people know that they're doing business with the human being, but their product, it has an aspect of AI that's going to serve them really, really well, and is going to support the company that is providing them that service. But I really think that having that human element is still very, very powerful. And I think
100%.
and I think there's a lot of people that that I follow on Instagram too, that are probably disagree with me, because they say automate everything, build this business, but it kind of feels like a soulless business if there isn't a human being there. And maybe that's just my way of thinking. Maybe it's an old school way of thinking, but I personally, I want to do business with people.
Yes. Brendan, another thing I want to say is that going back to a lot of social media also talks about AI and how easy it is for you to onboard AI, how easy it is to build this AI agent and that is AI agent, right? And then when I talk to business owners, sometimes they're like, oh, like, well, I saw this video out there, right, on social media that's showing me how to build AI agent. But then if you really want to build a good quality product, you need to have a good quality data. You need to have processes and systems and training around it. That all requires time and money. Because if you want to show up for your customer as a professional business that takes them seriously, that doesn't roll out their information that is not vetted, or for example, have these AI voice agents that are just providing information or responding in not in the manner that is that your quality, your voice, or your brand, just for the sake of it. Oh, well, there's a cheap tool out there. I'm paying like, I don't know, $500 for it. And it's click a button and let's go. Let's see how it goes. Well, how much, if you're not doing that, how much business is that costing you? If one customer is not happy with the responses that they've got that have not been audited on, are you that customer's thousands of dollars? Well, there's this awesome book. It's called How to Sell to Everybody. I don't have it in front of me, but the writer Joe Girard talks about Girard Rule 250. So what that means is that on average, every person in lifetime meets 250 people in their lifetime. So if you do one bad business to someone, that person will talk to 250 people in their lifetime about you. So when I read that, so Joe is a writer. He talks how he became a sales guy. He was selling cars. So for him, every time, for example, if he turned around two people just because he was in a bad mood, or he didn't respond them kindly, or he didn't provide a good information, right, or some false information, if he turned out two people in 1 year, they can fill up the huge stadium, basically football stadium, with people that those people talk to about that service. So when people are onboarding AI, right, they should be very cautious of, all right, I want to make sure that this AI is representing my business, my brand. This is me out there where I'm not physically present. So how do I make sure that I put quality out there? But for that, how do I make sure I have a good quality data infrastructure and systems, and training as well? And how do I make sure that I capture these leads that are coming through, that they can go through the pipelines as well? So it's
Yeah,
all investment at the end of the day. It's not a quick fix. I don't want people to think that's just a push of a button and everything is an AI can figure it out for them.
people are much more likely to talk about their bad experience that they've had with a company than the good experience that they've had, because a good experience comes with, it's in a lot of cases it's transactional, because it's like, I'm paying you money, the expectation is that you're going to give me good service. So if you pay them and you get good service, then you're less likely to tell people that you had good service, because it's just sort of that's expected. But if you get bad service and you disrespect your customers' money or disrespect their time, they are much more likely to go out and talk about that, right? In our case, somebody would say, hey, how's your renovation going? That's been going on for the last 8 months. And if we were doing a bad job, then they're going to say, oh, we're going through this reno, it's a nightmare, oh, this and that. And then they start saying, oh, who's your contractor that you're doing that with? Oh, it's right? But it is, people are much more likely to talk about their bad experiences than they are with their good experiences. So if you want people to talk about the good experience that they're having, it needs to be an exceptionally great experience.
Yeah, that's fair.
What are, 5 or 6 basic platforms that everybody should be trying to get familiar with? What would you say? Or even your top 3? What would you say these companies, all of you, everybody needs to at least have an understanding of and get familiar with, because you're not going to get away with them or without them. And they are, going to have probably the highest impact in your business.
Well, obviously, number one is OpenAI. Everybody loves OpenAI because you can literally prompt anything that you want, anything that you're trying to solve, and then ask even for it to write a prompt for you for this type of a problem. Then I will also ask them to go and use Google AI Studio and use real time option where they can share the screen, either if they're trying to create a SharePoint site, for example, or they're trying to navigate some type of actually I've seen them work out in one of the architectural applications, and if they trying to create a new design, they can share that screen with the Google AI Studio real time and ask them a question. Hey, how do I build this? Where do I go? Where do I click, for example? Where is that feature? And surprisingly would be able to guide somebody through the process. So I would say OpenAI, Google AI Studio, and number 3 would be, I would say, I'm giving right now the large language models, basically, OpenAI, Google AI Studio, and then another one I would do is I would do Claude as well. Like Claude would be really good, and I know it's all around prompting. Actually, no, I will do the 4th. I will do OpenAI Academy. It's free. It's 100% free. And some of the videos are 25 minutes long, for example, very short, something that's bite-sized. Some of them are even shorter. They can every day, if they can make some type of a plan and actually ask AI to make the plan for you. Literally be like, can you put together, I want to learn AI. I want to, this is, and AI will do a really good job if you tell it what your goal is. Not just I want to learn AI, it's kind of vague, right? Like I want to understand large language models in 3 weeks, And my experience is at 0 level. Explain it to me like I am just freshman out of college, for example, a freshman out of the high school. Like give it the age or give it so it knows in what format it should give you the information in, so it's more digestible. Or you could say, I have 0 technical experience. My background is in this and this and that, and I have this much years experience on it. So explain it to me like you would do to 11th grader, for example, that is interested in excelling their skills and learn large language models and understand how they work in 3-week span. Put together a detailed map for me, detailed steps on what features do I need to know that are useful in OpenAI, for example. How to utilize tasks, how to utilize canvas mode, how to utilize project mode, and prepare for me a course that I can follow every day, and I would like to dedicate 30 minutes of my time to it. And give me this course in Excel format or PDF format. So see what it comes up with.
Very, very, very specific, right? We've hit a timeline, we've hit a format, we've hit a prompt, we've hit an education level or a descriptive level. Like with the prompts that you're giving it, they are very specific, and the more specific you get, the more specific answers it's going to provide you.
Also, one more thing you would also want to say, give me the list. Oh, Perplexity, I forgot. Perplexity is amazing. So Perplexity is really good at giving you cited information, so more verified, trusted sources. OpenAI still sometimes, for example, right now I have a task that's going on there that does give me a daily AI news at 8 o'clock in the morning. So what it does, it, for example, drops the email at every morning at 8 o'clock on the news recaps that happened, for example. But I gave it the trusted sources that it has to go and scrape from. But I found those trusted sources on Perplexity AI. So sometimes OpenAI is still like, so it gives me like a kind of like, and I also said, give me the summary in 3 sentences. So I don't get very long summaries. And then I also give me a link to that source. So then I can click on it and kind of see the full article, for example. So I would try to use Perplexity to get the those trusted sources in terms of like, okay, where do I find AI news? Give me the trusted sources, give me the links, and give me all the websites where the AI news are on. And then I will bake that in my task, for example, and tell it to deliver in this format and this much and this type of like 3 sentences or 1 paragraph or 5 sentences into my email at this hour, for example.
Let me ask you, I got so many more questions, and you're going to have to come back. We're going to have to do this again because you've given me so much information. I'm going to have to go and play with it, and I'm going to have a lot more questions for you. But if you're working with a team, if you're a business owner and you're integrating AI into a team that doesn't really understand it, how, and they don't, there's some hesitancy there as to how to adopt it. What sort of conversation are you having with your team about adopting AI and how to use it and where the importance of it is, and in a way that it kind of covers all the worries that they have. What am I doing? Does this mean that I'm going to have less work? Does it mean that I'm going to have less hours? There's a lot of companies, especially right now, it's getting better and better, but there's still some hesitancy around, and maybe it's just in our industry, but there's some hesitancy about adopting AI as a company that people have some pushback on. And I think every employee should be using AI because it's an amazing tool. But not everybody has that perspective. So how do you have that conversation as a business owner to staff and to an organization about how we're going to be integrating AI?
Yes, I think first of all, number one thing, we want to make sure we have that conversation because it's so important. We don't want our team members doing something kind of hiding on the background or, for example, exposing some confidential proprietary information to the code, to the ChatGPT, for example, without you knowing it. So that's number one thing. I think security risk has to be training around that as well, how to ethically and responsibly use these large language models, depending on what industry you are in. If you're in a highly regulated industry like healthcare, you can't just ask ChatGPT and open up and roll out the information that now is private, for example. If you're in financial services, you need to be mindful of that. Or if you're putting some type of like, again, personal information about your customers or the code, if you were in more in, say, in a development shop, same thing. So you have to educate. That's why I think there should be some type of a security training on how do you ethically and responsibly use AI, large language models, for example. And then you should have some type of for example, if you're in Microsoft suite, there's a Copilot, get some type of licenses. Like you have to make that investment to make sure that everybody has a dedicated license. So there's a security around that, and that's where how you can also see, okay, what questions are being asked? Are they asked within the guardrails of your organization, within the, that people are not using AI without knowing, for example, or that I should not supposed to ask that question, or I'm not supposed to retrieve that type of information. So it's also very important aspect there as well. So training is very important, and then I would say security is very important. Another thing is like having conversation where it's empowering the team members and try to kind of navigate. And I know it could be very, very challenging because a lot of people get intimidated, but maybe what kind of a plan we can put together for you to be better at, what kind of resources I can give my team right now to make sure that they feel empowered, not threatened. How can I, because at the end of the day, what you could do also, I'm giving you all of these AI tools for you to learn on my dime that will make you marketable. You can
Right.
leave this
That's right.
job and now can find jobs somewhere else because now you have these skills that are and value that are in demand, that you know how to utilize these skills and bring value to your team members, to your employer, for example, increase sales, reduce churn, reduce expenses, operating expenses, reduce errors. You now basically empowered with this. So I feel like if we need to change the lenses of now employees, oh, I want to learn this, I'll make more money with this. Because at the end of the day, they can come to you, right, as a performance review and say, well, Brandon, I use these tools. I also learned these tools as well. Now look what I've done. I basically reduced our expenses here, and here, and I've if they're marketing person or if they're salesperson, I've brought in this much sale now. So they can come to you and actually show you the metrics now, how they increased your sales or how they brought more profit to your company, and ask you for a raise. And then they should be looking at this, that at the end of the day, what they taking, all that knowledge, they taking it for themselves. Nobody can take that away from them. Nobody. It's like they learning, they becoming better. They becoming more valuable. They becoming more marketable, for example, for themselves.
Before I go, I gotta write all this stuff down so that I don't forget it. Well, it's hot in my mind because I have so many things that I want to implement right now. Thank you so much for taking the time out. Where can people connect with you? Where can they find you? If they want to learn more about Omadli Group or you yourself or just AI in general.
Sure, absolutely. You can find me on social media, Zulfia Forsyth, at Zulfia Forsyth, and LinkedIn, or also Instagram as well. And if you're coming and listening to the show, just comment OpenAI and I will send you my AI tips link.
Amazing. Awesome. Thank you so much again. And all of our listeners that are out there that are still with us, thank you so much for being here. Have a great day.
Thank
Rock
you
and
for
roll.
having me.
See you next
Thank
time.
you.